I never imagined I'd find myself sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at John's phone like it held the answers to every question I had about our life. Me, Auntie Mae, the woman who always believed in trust, in honesty, in the quiet strength of love. And yet, here I was, trembling, heart racing, staring at that glowing screen like it was some forbidden window into a world I wasn't supposed to see. It had been an ordinary evening, or so I told myself. John had come home later than usual, and there was something in the way he moved, the way he kept checking his own phone, that made a small nagging voice whisper in my chest. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But the feeling wouldn't leave. It was like a shadow at the edge of my mind, growing larger with every passing minute. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. "You're imagining things, May," I whispered, trying to soothe the knot of anxiety in my stomach. "You've been married for 22 years. He loves you. This is just work stress." But the phone, the way it vibrated quietly on the nightstand whenever he thought I wasn't looking, the way he laughed softly at some message I couldn't see, the way he moved with a certain hesitation when I asked who he was talking to, all of it pressed on me, until I could no longer deny the pull of suspicion. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at that phone. My hands itched to pick it up, to unlock it, to know the truth. And the more I resisted, the more the curiosity, the fear, the gnawing need for answers consumed me. Finally, with a shaky breath, I reached for it. The weight of my own hands on the phone felt heavy, almost like I was holding a piece of my own life in my palm. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Could I do this? Could I really betray the trust we had built over 2 decades, just to satisfy this gnawing need to know? But some part of me, the part that had learned long ago that ignoring the truth never made it go away, whispered, "You need to see it. You need to know." So I pressed the screen. The phone unlocked with a simple swipe, but in that moment, it felt like opening a door to a world I wasn't prepared for. Messages, texts, emojis, names I didn't recognize. And then there it was. A text that made my chest seize. "Can't wait to see you tonight," face blowing a kiss. I froze. My heart hammered so violently I thought it might break through my ribcage. I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the words, trying desperately to tell myself it meant nothing. Maybe it was a work joke. Maybe it was some innocent conversation I didn't understand. But the messages kept coming, one after another, each more intimate, more secretive than the last. Late-night meetups, private jokes, laughter that I wasn't part of. And just like that, my world tilted on its axis. He was cheating. John, the man I had loved with all my heart, the man I had trusted without question, was living a double life right under my nose. I set the phone down on the nightstand, my hands shaking so badly I could barely lift my coffee cup. Tears blurred my vision. The room felt too small, the walls closing in. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. All I could do was sit there and feel the sharp burning pain of betrayal cut through me like a knife. And yet, even as the shock threatened to swallow me whole, a strange clarity emerged. This phone, the one I had hesitated to touch, the one I had feared might hold my worst nightmare, had become the undeniable truth I needed. I realized something in that moment. Trust is precious, fragile, and once broken, it can never be the same. And love, no matter how deep, cannot survive lies. I wanted to confront him immediately, to hurl the phone at him, to demand every secret, every hidden truth. But I stayed quiet, listening to the faint sounds of him moving around the house, his laughter on the phone, completely oblivious that I knew. The contrast between his normalcy and the betrayal I had discovered was almost unbearable. I wanted to run, to flee, to escape the suffocating weight of it all, but I knew I had to hold on, to gather my strength, to face him not as a broken woman, but as someone who still had dignity left. The next morning I couldn't bring myself to speak. I moved like a ghost through our home, pretending everything was normal while the phone sat on the nightstand, glowing silently, a constant reminder of what I had learned. Each vibration, each notification, each glance at that small screen reminded me that my life, my marriage, the man I thought I knew was no longer what it seemed. Days passed, each one a careful dance of pretense. I watched him closely, noticed every glance at the phone, every secretive smile, every whispered conversation. My heart ached, but the phone, the simple, glowing rectangle on the nightstand, remained my anchor. It was my truth, my evidence, my cruel but necessary window into reality. Finally, the confrontation came one evening. I held the phone in my hands, feeling the weight of every secret, every lie, every stolen moment. I looked at him and spoke, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "John," I said, "we need to talk." His face shifted, a flicker of guilt crossing his features. He tried to smile, to laugh it off, but I held up the phone, the glowing screen illuminating the messages he thought were private. He faltered. He stammered. Words tumbled out of his mouth, excuses, apologies, explanations, but none of it mattered. The phone had told the truth. It had revealed everything. I told him I loved him once, that I trusted him once, but that trust had been broken. I told him that honesty was not optional in a marriage, that love without truth was empty. The phone, I said, had been the instrument of my discovery, but it was also the teacher that made me see the reality of our life. I left that night. I packed a bag with only what I needed, what reminded me of myself, what symbolized the life I wanted to reclaim. The phone stayed behind, glowing softly on the nightstand, a reminder of betrayal, yes, but also of clarity, of the courage I had found within myself. Walking away was painful. The phone's presence lingered in my mind, a haunting yet illuminating witness to everything I had endured. And yet, as I stepped into the night, leaving behind the life I had known, I also stepped into a life of my own making. A life where my dignity, my strength, and my choices mattered above all else. That night, that phone revealed his betrayal. And that night, it also revealed my own power, the power to face truth, to feel pain, and to rise again. The next few days were some of the hardest I have ever lived. I had left that night, carrying only a small bag and the heavy weight of betrayal, but I could not leave the phone behind entirely from my mind. It haunted me, its glowing screen burned into my memory like a cruel reminder of what I had lost and what I had learned. Every time I thought of John, every time I remembered the laughter we had shared, the tenderness we had once held, I saw that phone in my mind's eye, the messages laid bare, undeniable. I stayed with my sister, Margaret, who had always been my anchor in times of trouble. When I walked through her door, she wrapped me in a hug, as if she could shield me from the storm of my own heart. I cried, of course I cried, for the love I had believed in, for the trust that had been shattered, for the life I thought I had. But amid the tears, Margaret reminded me that I was not powerless, that the phone, that simple device, had given me something John never could, knowledge. And knowledge, she said, is strength even if it comes wrapped in pain. I spent the first night in her spare bedroom, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. I thought of John, of the man I had loved, of the husband I had trusted. And I thought of the woman, or maybe women I still didn't know, whose texts had appeared on his phone, whose emojis and secrets had betrayed me. The phone had shown me more than just his actions. It had revealed the cracks in our life I had ignored, the tiny fractures that had grown over years until they shattered everything. Margaret asked me if I wanted to confront him again, if I wanted to demand explanations, but I shook my head. The phone had already done that for me. It had spoken the truth, and I didn't need his words to validate what I had already discovered. What I needed, I realized, was to reclaim my life. To let go of the illusion of our marriage and start seeing myself again, not as John's wife, but as a woman who still had dreams, still had worth, still had the ability to be whole. Even so, the phone's presence lingered in my mind. I found myself thinking of it constantly, wondering what new messages might have appeared if I had left it unchecked, wondering if there were calls I hadn't seen, photos I hadn't noticed, secrets I had yet to uncover. It was almost as if the phone had become a symbol, a mirror reflecting the truth I had refused to see for so long. One morning, I decided to do something I had avoided since that night. I called John. My hands shook as I dialed his number, the same hands that had trembled when I first touched that phone, when I first saw the messages that changed everything. I didn't know what I would say, or if I wanted to hear his voice, or if I could forgive him even a fraction of what he had done. But I needed closure. I needed to understand why. When he answered, his voice was hesitant, almost as if he knew I had already seen everything. I didn't speak immediately. I let the silence stretch, felt the tension coil around me like a serpent. Finally I said, "John, I know." He sighed, a sound heavy with guilt and relief and fear all at once. "May, I can explain," he said, but I held up my hand. "No," I said firmly. "There's nothing to explain. I saw it. I saw everything on your phone. And seeing it, it's enough. It told me what I needed to know. There was a pause. I could almost hear him swallowing, the weight of his shame pressing through the line. I made a mistake, he said finally. I never meant for you to find out this way. I laughed bitterly. It was a short, sharp sound that startled even me. Mistake? I asked, my voice trembling with anger and sorrow. Do you know what it feels like to watch the person you trusted with your whole heart smile at someone else on a phone? Do you know what it feels like to hold that device in your hands and realize your life has been a lie? He was silent, and for a moment I almost felt pity for him. Almost. But the phone had shown me enough. I didn't need more words, more excuses, more lies. I hung up, my heart pounding, and felt a strange mixture of relief and grief wash over me. The phone, that small glowing rectangle, had given me freedom, but it had also reminded me of the pain that freedom carried. Over the next weeks, I began the process of untangling my life. I moved my things into a small apartment, one that felt like a fresh start rather than a retreat. I changed my routines, my habits, my daily life, all while the memory of the phone and what it had revealed hovered at the edge of my mind. I would sometimes catch myself reaching for a phone of my own, half expecting to see a message from John, half hoping I wouldn't. And in those moments I realized just how much power a phone, a single device, could hold, not just as a tool of communication, but as a vessel of truth, a revealer of secrets, a catalyst for change. Friends and family noticed the change in me, though they didn't know the full story. They saw a woman who carried herself differently, who spoke with a quiet confidence they hadn't seen before. And I realized that the phone, that glowing screen, had done more than expose John's betrayal. It had sparked a transformation in me. It forced me to confront reality, to face pain, and to choose a path forward rather than sinking into despair. One evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, I found myself thinking again about that night. The room was quiet, the city lights glimmering outside my window. I picked up my own phone, not to check messages from him, not to revisit the past, but to remind myself of the power I now held. I typed a note to myself: you are stronger than you think. You survived the betrayal. You can survive anything. I thought about how strange it was that such a small object, a phone, a device I had once thought of as mundane, could hold such weight. It had the ability to destroy, to expose, to hurt, but it also had the power to liberate, to illuminate, to teach. In the hands of the right or wrong person, it could alter the course of a life entirely. That night I had seen its power firsthand, and I knew I would never be the same. And yet, even as I embraced my newfound strength, I still felt the ache of loss. I missed John in ways that were complicated, painful, and confusing. I missed the man I thought he was, the life we had built together, the laughter and shared dreams that now seemed like memories from another world. But the phone, that unforgiving truth-teller, had shown me that love without honesty is not love at all. And as I held on to that lesson, I began to see a path forward, a life where I could heal, where I could find joy again, where I could live without the shadows of deception. I started small, long walks, coffee with old friends, reconnecting with hobbies I had abandoned. Every time I reached for my own phone, I reminded myself that it was a tool, not a trap. I could use it to connect, to learn, to grow, not to relive the hurt inflicted by someone else's choices. And slowly, day by day, I began to feel lighter, stronger, more myself. The phone had shown me betrayal, yes, but it had also shown me something far more important: my own resilience. It had reminded me that even in the darkest nights, even when the person you love most turns out to be a stranger, you can survive. You can rebuild. You can rise. And sometimes it takes a small, glowing rectangle in the palm of your hand to force you to see the truth, to confront the pain, and to reclaim your life. That night I checked John's phone. I discovered his infidelity. And that night I discovered something else entirely: that I was stronger than the betrayal, braver than the heartbreak, and capable of stepping into a life that belonged to me and me alone. The days turned into weeks, and the phone, the same phone that had revealed everything, remained in my mind like a shadow I couldn't shake. I didn't need to touch it anymore. Its memory, its glowing screen, and the messages that had torn my world apart followed me everywhere. I realized just how much power a single device could hold. One small rectangle of plastic and glass had upended 22 years of marriage and forced me to confront truths I had long ignored. John tried to call me several times after that night. Each time I stared at my own phone, my thumb hovering over the green button, unsure if I had the courage or the desire to hear his voice. When I finally did answer, I found myself speaking with a calmness I hadn't expected. "John," I said, "I know what you've done, and I don't need you to justify it." The phone told me everything. He was silent, the pause stretching across the line like an eternity. I could hear him swallowing, trying to gather words, but I let the silence hold. I didn't need excuses. I didn't need apologies. I had seen the truth, and the phone had shown it more clearly than any conversation ever could. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. But I had already learned that apologies without change are hollow. The phone had proven that actions matter more than words. And his actions had spoken volumes. I spent my days navigating a life I hadn't known how to live alone. I moved into a small apartment in the city, a place where I could breathe without the constant presence of deceit. At first it felt strange, almost unnatural. The space was quiet in a way that my home with John never had been. But with the quiet came clarity. I could think, could feel. I could start to piece together the woman I had been before I had lost myself in a marriage built on lies. I started to notice things I had forgotten about myself, the way I laughed when I was truly happy, the joy I felt when reading a good book, the pride I took in simple things like cooking a meal for just me or tending to my small balcony garden. The phone had been the catalyst for all this, an unlikely teacher. It had stripped away illusions, forced me to confront reality, and in doing so it had handed me the keys to my own life. One evening as I was sipping tea by the window, my mind wandered back to that night. I remembered my trembling hands as I unlocked his phone, the way my heart had thudded in my chest as I scrolled through the messages. I could still feel the shock, the betrayal, the overwhelming sadness, and yet beneath it all there was a flicker of something else: power. I had held the evidence in my own hands. I had seen the truth for myself. And with that knowledge came a strange, unshakable strength. John called again a few days later. I didn't answer at first. When I finally picked up, I kept my voice steady, even cordial. "May, please, can we meet? Can we talk?" he asked, desperation creeping in. I thought about it long and hard. My instinct was to avoid him entirely, to build walls so high that nothing from our past could reach me. But there was a part of me, the part that had loved him once and still carried memories of that love, that wanted to confront him face to face, to see if he could truly look at me and understand the damage he had caused. So I agreed to meet him at a neutral cafe downtown. I arrived early, sitting at a corner table, my eyes scanning the door every few seconds. When he walked in, I noticed immediately how different he looked, not in appearance but in demeanor. There was guilt etched into his features, tension in his shoulders, a hesitancy in the way he moved. And yet I didn't feel the anger I expected. I felt something far more complicated, a mixture of sorrow, disappointment, and the oddest sense of relief. I placed my own phone on the table, not to check messages or revisit the past, but as a symbol of what had changed. "John," I began, keeping my voice steady, "I want you to understand what that phone showed me. It didn't just reveal your betrayal. It revealed the reality of our marriage. The secrets, the lies, the things you chose to hide rather than face. And I need you to see that." He looked down, nodding slightly. "I know," he said quietly. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I made a terrible mistake. I wish I could take it back." I took a deep breath. "It's not about forgiveness right now. It's about truth. That phone, your phone, was the mirror I needed. It reflected everything I refused to see. And it showed me that I am stronger than the pain it caused." For a moment he said nothing. And in that silence I realized something profound. The phone, the very thing I had feared, had been my ally in disguise. It had forced me to confront reality, to face the betrayal, and to take the first steps toward reclaiming my life. Without it, I might still be living in denial, trapped in a marriage that no longer existed in truth. I left the cafe that day with a sense of quiet resolve. I knew that John's presence in my life might diminish completely, or perhaps we might find some way to coexist civilly, but the decision no longer depended on him. The phone had shown me the truth, but it had also shown me something else: my own power to act, to choose, to survive. In the following weeks, I focused on myself. I reconnected with old friends, attended local community events, and took up painting again, something I had abandoned years ago in the busy, chaotic life I shared with John. Each brushstroke, each conversation, Each small step reminded me that I was still whole, still capable of joy, and still deserving of love that was honest and unbroken. I even found a kind of gratitude for that phone. Strange as it may sound, it had been the instrument that changed my life. It had brought pain, yes, but it had also brought clarity. It had revealed betrayal, but it had also revealed my strength. And in its glow I had found a path forward, one where I could live without lies, without fear, without shadows looming over every interaction. Then came an unexpected moment, a message on my own phone, not from John, but from someone I hadn't heard from in years. A friend from my past, someone who had always valued honesty and warmth, reached out simply to check in. May, the message read, I've been thinking of you. How are you? For the first time in weeks, I felt a smile curl across my lips. I realized that life could still bring unexpected joys, connections, and moments of tenderness. That phone, my own, had become a symbol not of betrayal, but of possibility. And I knew deep in my heart that I was ready to embrace it. Looking back, I see now how pivotal that night truly was. The night I checked John's phone. The night I discovered the truth. It was painful, shattering, heartbreaking, but it was also transformative. It taught me that truth, no matter how harsh, is a gift. That strength comes not from ignoring pain, but from confronting it. And that sometimes the very thing that hurts you most can be the key to your freedom. I still remember the feel of the phone in my hands, the cold glow of its screen, the messages that cut through years of trust like a knife. I remember the fear, the hesitation, the trembling, and then the undeniable clarity. And I know now that in that small, glowing rectangle lay a lesson far greater than I could have imagined. That love without honesty is empty, that betrayal reveals character, and that facing the truth, no matter how devastating, can set you free. The journey wasn't over. There were still moments of doubt, days of sorrow, and nights when the memory of that glowing screen haunted me. But I had learned to live alongside it, to use it as a reminder of the courage I had found within myself. The phone had changed everything, and in that change I had found myself. That night I checked John's phone, I saw his betrayal. And in seeing it, I found something even more profound. I was capable of rising above it, reclaiming my life, and walking forward into a future that belonged to me, unshackled by lies and illuminated by truth. Weeks passed, and with each day the memory of that phone, the phone that had revealed John's betrayal, started to transform from a source of pain into a symbol of clarity. I carried its lessons with me like a talisman, a reminder that truth, no matter how harsh, is always better than living in shadows. But even as I embraced my newfound independence, life had a way of testing me, of throwing small, unexpected challenges that forced me to grow in ways I hadn't anticipated. I had settled into my apartment, decorated it with bright colors, plants, and little touches that reflected who I was beyond the title of John's wife. The first night I spent alone, I sat on my small balcony sipping tea, staring at the city lights and thinking about the past. The phone had shown me his lies, but it had also opened my eyes to myself. I realized that for too long, I had measured my worth by someone else's choices, someone else's affection. That would never happen again. And yet, despite the strength I had found, there were moments of loneliness that crept in like shadows. I would pick up my own phone, scroll through old messages from friends, and sometimes catch myself thinking about John. I wondered if he had changed, if he regretted, if he even thought of me. But the memory of that phone, the glowing screen, the evidence of his betrayal, reminded me that some questions had no answers that would heal me. Some truths were meant to be faced, not revisited. One afternoon, as I was running errands, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before opening it, a small pang of anxiety in my chest. My thumb hovered over the screen as if it were the same phone that had betrayed me all those weeks ago. When I finally opened it, my eyes widened. May? This is Lisa. I know John. I think you should know something. My heart stopped. The phone trembled slightly in my hand. Even after everything, it had the power to make me stop in my tracks. I sat down on a nearby bench, hands shaking, and read the message over and over. Lisa explained that she had been aware of John's other life for some time, and that there were details he had kept even from me. The phone I had checked had revealed the surface, the messages, but Lisa hinted that the reality was even more complicated. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Just when I thought I had understood the full truth, the phone reminded me that I had only scratched the surface. Betrayal, it seemed, had layers, and each notification, each message, could reveal something I wasn't prepared for. And yet I felt a strange surge of gratitude. The phone had brought me to this point. It had forced me to face the unimaginable. And now, even as it delivered new shocks, I trusted myself to handle them. That evening I called Lisa. We met at a small cafe near the park, and as she spoke, the story unfolded like a dark tapestry. John had been involved with multiple people over time, juggling lies and secrecy like a dangerous game. The phone had shown me one part, but Lisa revealed the threads that wove through the past months and even years. I listened, letting her words sink in, feeling the sting of reality, but also feeling a strange sense of vindication. The phone had been my first glimpse. Now I was seeing the full picture. By the time I left the cafe, the sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets. My own phone vibrated with incoming messages from friends checking in on me, but I didn't respond immediately. I sat on a bench staring at it, thinking about how this small device had shaped the course of my life. It had exposed lies, illuminated truth, and now guided me toward a new understanding of myself and the world around me. In the days that followed, I began to take more deliberate steps to rebuild my life. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping older women navigate technology, teaching them how to use their phones, tablets, and computers. It was ironic, really, after everything, the very thing that had caused me so much pain had become a bridge to helping others. And in teaching, I found a new sense of purpose, a way to channel my experience into something meaningful. Each evening, I would sit in my apartment with my own phone in hand, reflecting on the journey I had been through. I realized that technology, like life itself, is neither inherently good nor bad. It is what we make of it. The same phone that had delivered betrayal could also deliver freedom, connection, and self-discovery. And in that realization I found peace. One night, as I prepared for bed, I received a message from John. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity, tempered by wisdom, made me open it. "May I need to apologize again. I've lost everything and I know you don't want to hear it. But I hope one day you can forgive me." I stared at the screen, feeling the familiar pang of anger and sorrow. The phone had delivered this message, just as it had delivered the others. And I realized that I didn't need to respond. Forgiveness wasn't about him, it was about me. It was about reclaiming my life and moving forward without the weight of his choices pressing down on my heart. I set the phone down, smiling softly to myself. The power it had held over me had diminished. I was no longer the woman who trembled with fear at the sight of his messages. I was a woman who had faced the truth, embraced her pain, and stepped into her own life with courage. The phone was no longer a weapon. It was a teacher, a witness, and ultimately, a symbol of resilience. As the weeks turned into months, I found joy in small things: morning walks in the park, phone calls with friends, even texting with people I met through volunteering. I began to see the world not as a place of betrayal, but as a place of possibilities. And each time my phone buzzed with a new notification, I no longer flinched. I held it in my hands with confidence, knowing that I had the strength to handle whatever truth it might deliver. Then one evening my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it, expecting perhaps another complication, another revelation about John. But this message was different. "May, this is Daniel. I saw your profile through the community center. Would you like to meet for coffee?" I laughed softly, a sound of relief and hope mingled together. The phone, once a source of heartbreak, was now offering the possibility of new connections, new experiences, and even new love. It was strange to think that the device that had caused so much pain could also open doors to joy. I didn't respond immediately. I sat quietly, feeling the weight of the journey I had been through. The phone had shown me betrayal, heartbreak, and truth. It had forced me to confront the worst and the best of myself. And now it was giving me a choice: to open my heart again, to embrace life fully, and to trust, not blindly but wisely. That night, I fell asleep holding my own phone close, not in fear but in hope. The glowing screen, once a symbol of deception, had become a symbol of possibility. I realized that the night I checked John's phone had been the beginning, not the end of my journey. It had shown me what was broken, but it had also shown me what could be rebuilt, with courage, wisdom, and self-respect. I woke the next morning with a sense of purpose. I didn't know what the future held, or where life would lead me, but I knew this. The phone had taught me that truth is a gift, even when it hurts. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to face it. And that the choices we make in the aftermath of betrayal define who we are far more than the betrayal itself ever could. The phone had taken from me a sense of innocence, a comfortable illusion, and a false security. But it had also given me clarity, freedom, and the knowledge that I could survive, thrive, and love myself fully again. And as I looked at it now, I smiled, knowing that the journey I had started with trembling hands and a glowing screen had led me to a life that was mine, entirely and unapologetically mine. That night I checked John's phone. I discovered betrayal. And through it I discovered the extraordinary strength that lies within each of us, the strength to face the truth, to embrace our pain, and to rise into the light of our own lives. Life continued to unfold in ways I had never expected. The phone, once a source of heartbreak and betrayal, had slowly become a bridge to a new world. Every day I discovered a little more about myself, about the life I had almost lost to someone else's deceit, and about the strength I never realized I possessed. I had settled into a comfortable routine. Mornings were mine alone with tea, a book, and the quiet hum of the city outside my window. Afternoons were spent volunteering at the community center, teaching older women to navigate technology, just as I had learned to navigate the harsh truths revealed by a glowing screen. Each lesson I taught reminded me that pain can be transformed into purpose, that even betrayal can give birth to something beautiful if we allow it to. One morning, as I was arranging chairs for a workshop, my phone buzzed with a message from John. For a moment, my heart skipped a beat. I picked it up cautiously, expecting anger, manipulation, or some desperate plea for forgiveness. But what I found made me pause. "May, I know I've caused you more pain than I can ever imagine. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I hope you are finding happiness. I see now the truth in everything the phone revealed, and I'm trying to live with it. I'm truly sorry." I read the message 3 times, feeling a strange mixture of emotions, sadness, relief, and a touch of something like pity. The phone had delivered his confession without confrontation, without theatrics, without excuses. And in its quiet glow, I realized that I no longer needed him to validate my feelings. The phone had already done its work. It had shown me the truth, forced me to face it, and had helped me find my own strength. Weeks went by without incident. I began exploring new hobbies, reconnecting with old friends, and slowly building a life that didn't revolve around John or the pain he had caused. Yet the phone remained a quiet presence in my mind, a reminder of both betrayal and empowerment. Every notification, every message was a small test of my resilience, and I met each one with confidence. Then one evening, as I was returning from a community event, I received a message from Daniel, the man I had met through volunteering. My heart fluttered slightly as I opened it. "May, I've been thinking. Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow? No obligations, just a chance to talk." I smiled softly. The phone, which had once been an instrument of heartbreak, was now offering a chance for connection, for possibility, for new beginnings. I typed a reply carefully. "Yes, I'd like that." The next evening, I met Daniel at a small, cozy restaurant downtown. We talked about simple things at first, books, hobbies, the community center, but soon our conversation deepened. He asked me about my life, my experiences, and I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't with anyone for years. And yet there was no rush, no pressure, no judgment. Just conversation, laughter, and the subtle warmth of connection. During dinner, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it instinctively, expecting some urgent message, some reminder of past pain. But it was nothing serious, a notification from a friend, a reminder about an upcoming workshop. I smiled, realizing how far I had come. The phone was no longer a symbol of betrayal. It was a tool, a companion, a witness to the life I was building. After dinner, Daniel walked me home. We paused at the corner of my street, and he looked at me with a gentle smile. "May," he said softly, "I hope this is just the beginning of something good for you. You deserve it." I nodded, feeling a warmth spread through me. The journey from that night I had checked John's phone to this moment had been painful, complicated, and full of lessons. And yet I felt a quiet sense of hope that I hadn't felt in years. The following days brought unexpected challenges. John reached out again, this time with more directness, asking if we could meet to discuss practical matters, our shared property, finances, and closure. For a moment I hesitated. Part of me wanted to avoid him entirely, to sever all ties. But the memory of that phone, the truth it had revealed, the courage it had forced me to summon, reminded me that I was capable of facing him without fear. We arranged to meet at a neutral location. I arrived early, my own phone in hand, a small talisman of my newfound strength. When John walked in, I noticed immediately the tension in his posture, the careful avoidance of eye contact, the way he seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of his own choices. We sat across from each other and I spoke first. "John, we need to discuss our affairs and property. But let me be clear. I am not here to reconcile or to justify anything." The phone told me everything. And it also told me that I am strong enough to move forward without you controlling my life. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand," he said quietly. "I don't expect forgiveness and I don't want to impose. I just want to do what's fair." We went through the details calmly, almost clinically. No shouting, no tears, no recrimination. The phone had stripped away the illusions, the pretenses, and left only truth. And in that truth I found clarity, a sense of resolution I hadn't thought possible so soon. After the meeting, as I walked back to my apartment, I thought about how strange it was that a small device could hold such power over a life. One night of curiosity, one night of trembling hands and a glowing screen, had altered everything. It had revealed betrayal, forced reflection, and ultimately guided me toward independence. In the weeks that followed, I continued to build my life, finding joy in small victories, a completed painting, a new friendship, a message from Daniel, and even quiet evenings spent reading and reflecting. The phone, once a source of heartbreak, had become a symbol of my resilience. I no longer feared it. I respected it, understanding its power to reveal, to guide, and to connect. Then came an unexpected twist. One afternoon, as I was volunteering, I received a message from Lisa, the woman who had originally contacted me about John. She had been quiet for weeks, but now she wrote, "May, there's something else you should know. John, he's been trying to reconcile with several women he has wronged, not just you. I wanted you to be aware, in case it affects you in any way." My first instinct was to feel shock, anger, maybe even despair. But instead I felt calm. The phone, the one I had once dreaded, had prepared me for this moment. I read her message carefully, acknowledged it, and put the phone down. The information was important, yes, but it did not have the power to derail me. I had already reclaimed my strength, my dignity, and my life. That evening, as I sat in my apartment, I reflected on the journey from that night I had first checked John's phone to this very moment. Pain had transformed into power, betrayal into clarity, heartbreak into self-respect. The phone had been the catalyst, the witness, and the teacher. I realized something profound. The phone had shown me that life can be both cruel and kind, that truth can hurt and heal simultaneously, and that the choices we make in response to betrayal define us more than the betrayal itself. I had chosen to rise, to embrace independence, and to allow the possibility of new love and new experiences into my life. And in doing so, I had discovered that no device, no matter how revealing, could take away my strength unless I allowed it to. The night I checked John's phone had changed everything. It had revealed the truth, shattered illusions, and forced me to confront the reality of my marriage. But it had also given me clarity, courage, and the opportunity to rebuild a life that was fully and unapologetically mine. And as I looked at my own phone, now a symbol of hope rather than fear, I knew that the journey was far from over. Life would continue to present challenges, surprises, and even heartbreaks, but I was ready. The phone had shown me that even in the darkest nights, even when the people we love betray us, we have the power to rise, to reclaim our lives, and to step into the light of our own truth. The following weeks were a mixture of calm and small surprises. Life, I realized, had a way of reminding us that even after betrayal, even after heartbreak, we are capable of discovering joy in the most unexpected ways. The phone, which had once felt like a weapon against my happiness, had now become a quiet companion in my journey, showing me messages, connections, and reminders that life could still be full of hope. One morning, Daniel sent a simple message. "May, would you like to go on a walk in the park this afternoon? Just fresh air and good conversation." I smiled as I read it. The phone, once a source of tension, now delivered invitations to joy, to life beyond my fears. I typed a quick reply, "I'd love that." As we walked through the park later that day, the sun streaming through the trees, I felt a sense of normalcy that had eluded me for months. Daniel and I talked about small things at first, the books we were reading, our favorite meals, childhood memories. And then naturally we delved deeper, sharing dreams, fears, and the lessons life had taught us. I spoke of the night I had discovered John's betrayal through his phone, and he listened without judgment, only with empathy and understanding. "It must have been incredibly difficult," he said softly, "to see the truth in such a raw way all at once." I nodded. It was. But it also showed me something I hadn't realized, that I am stronger than I thought, braver than I believed. That one night, one small device changed my life forever. He smiled, a quiet, genuine smile that warmed me. "And it led you here to this moment, walking with me, open to life again." I laughed lightly, feeling a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. The phone had carried so much weight in my life, and yet here I was, using it as a tool to embrace new beginnings. The irony was not lost on me, but neither was the beauty of it. Back at my apartment, I reflected on the journey. The phone had shown me John's infidelity, delivered messages from friends and strangers, and even opened the door to new connections like Daniel. It had been both a weapon and a guide, a reminder that truth, no matter how painful, is the first step toward freedom. Then came an unexpected message from John. My thumb hovered over the screen as I stared at it. I didn't need to open it, but curiosity and a desire for closure nudged me forward. "May, I've been thinking a lot. I see now the depth of my mistakes, and I don't expect anything from you. But I want you to know that I regret everything. I hope you find happiness. Truly." I read it slowly, letting each word settle in my heart. I felt a rush of emotions, residual sadness, lingering anger, but also a surprising sense of closure. The phone had delivered this message without drama, without confrontation, and in its simplicity I found peace. I typed a brief reply, "Thank you. I am finding my own happiness." After sending it, I put the phone down and felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The journey from betrayal to self-discovery had been long and painful, but it was complete. The phone had been the catalyst, but the growth, the courage, and the strength had come from within me. Over the next few days, I noticed subtle changes in myself. I laughed more easily, walked taller, and felt a sense of independence that was intoxicating. I still carried the lessons of that phone with me, the understanding that truth, however painful, is necessary, that betrayal does not define us, and that the courage to face reality can transform our lives in ways we never imagined. One evening, Daniel invited me to dinner at a quiet little bistro. The moment felt significant, not because of romance alone, but because it symbolized the life I was building, one filled with choices, possibilities, and respect for myself. As we shared a meal, we spoke of hopes, dreams, and the future. I realized that the journey from heartbreak to this moment had been guided by courage, self-respect, and yes, even a phone that had revealed truths I could not ignore. Later that night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed with messages from friends celebrating small victories, updates from the community center, and a simple, encouraging note from Daniel. "Sleep well, May. Tomorrow is another day to embrace life." I smiled, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. The phone, once a symbol of betrayal and heartbreak, had become a tool for connection, reflection, and empowerment. I realized that the night I checked John's phone had not just revealed his infidelity, it had revealed the strength, resilience, and capacity for growth that lay within me all along. Then an unexpected twist. A message from Lisa appeared on my screen. "May, I need to tell you one last thing about John. He tried to manipulate several people, but he also changed jobs, moved, and seems to be seeking help for his behavior. I thought you should know." I paused before reading further. The phone had once brought me pain, but now it brought clarity. The message didn't affect my life directly, but it offered insight into the man John had become, or perhaps the man he was trying to become. I didn't feel anger or resentment this time. Instead, I felt a sense of completion, as if the phone itself was helping me close a chapter that had begun so painfully months ago. I replied briefly, "Thank you for letting me know. I'm moving forward with my life now." With that, I felt a sense of finality. The phone had played its part, revealing secrets, delivering messages, and guiding me toward truth and empowerment. I was no longer its prisoner. I was its master, using it as a tool to navigate life, embrace connection, and honor my own journey. In the weeks that followed, life continued to surprise me. Daniel and I grew closer, not hurriedly but steadily, building a foundation of trust, respect, and shared values. I reconnected with friends, pursued passions, and even began mentoring younger women at the community center, teaching them to navigate life, technology, and the challenges of relationships. And through it all, the phone remained a constant presence, not as a source of pain, but as a reminder of the night that had changed everything, the night I checked John's phone. I would think back to that night often. I remembered the trembling in my hands, the racing heart, the shock of seeing the truth laid bare in messages and images. I remembered the anger, the heartbreak, and the fear of what life might look like after that revelation. And I remembered the moment when I realized that the phone had not only shown me betrayal, but also shown me my own strength, my courage, and my ability to rise above pain. Now, months later, the glow of a phone screen no longer frightened me. It was a tool, a guide, a companion in the journey of life. And in that glow, I saw not betrayal but possibility. Not heartbreak but growth. Not the end but the beginning. The night I checked John's phone, I discovered betrayal. But through it, I discovered something far more profound, that even in the depths of hurt and heartbreak, we have the power to rise, reclaim our lives, and embrace the truth that sets us free. And as I held my own phone that evening, reading a message from Daniel inviting me for another walk in the park, I realized something I hadn't known before. The phone had changed everything, yes, but the real transformation had come from me. From my courage, my resilience, and my decision to face the truth. The days that followed felt lighter, as if a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying had finally lifted. Life had taken me from heartbreak to clarity, from betrayal to self-discovery, and from despair to hope. That night I had checked John's phone seemed like a lifetime ago, yet its lessons lingered in every choice I made, every interaction I embraced, every quiet moment I allowed myself to savor. Daniel and I had grown closer in ways that felt natural, unhurried, and authentic. The phone, once a harbinger of heartbreak, now carried messages of joy, invitations to connect, and reminders that life could offer happiness even after betrayal. It had been a strange journey, from fear and trembling to confidence and trust, but I had emerged on the other side stronger than I had ever imagined. One sunny morning as I was walking through the park with Daniel, the city alive with the sounds of children playing and birds singing, I realized how far I had come. I no longer carried anger toward John, no longer felt the sting of betrayal with every memory, and no longer feared the power of a glowing screen. The phone had shown me the truth, but it had also shown me something far greater. My own resilience, my capacity for growth, and my ability to embrace life fully. As we paused by a small fountain, Daniel looked at me and said, "May, you've been through so much, yet you shine brighter than anyone I know. It's inspiring." I smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond affection. It was pride in myself, in the woman I had become. "Daniel," I replied, "it wasn't easy. But life has a way of showing us the truth in unexpected ways. Sometimes even pain can be a teacher." He nodded thoughtfully. "It seems like the phone was your teacher." I laughed softly. "In a way, yes. That small device revealed truths I couldn't ignore, forced me to face reality, and ultimately helped me reclaim my life. I used to see it as a weapon, but now I see it as a guide, a companion, and a reminder that truth, no matter how painful, can set you free." Later that day, as I returned to my apartment, my phone buzzed with notifications. Messages from friends, updates from the community center, and a simple note from Daniel wishing me a good evening. I held it in my hands, reflecting on the journey it had taken me through. From the night I had first unlocked John's phone, through weeks of heartbreak, confrontation, reflection, and healing, the device had been a witness to my transformation. I remembered vividly the fear, the hesitation, the trembling hands, and the shock of that first message thread. I remembered reading words that shattered illusions, words that demanded courage and self-reflection. And I remembered the choice I had made to face the truth, to reclaim my power, and to refuse to let betrayal define me. Over the following weeks, I focused on building a life rooted in authenticity, compassion, and self-respect. I reconnected with old friends, nurtured my hobbies, and devoted time to mentoring other women at the community center. I taught them to embrace technology not as a source of anxiety, but as a tool for connection, empowerment, and independence. In doing so, I felt the power of my own experiences ripple outward, touching lives beyond my own. One evening, as I was painting a small landscape by my window, my phone buzzed with a message from John. I felt a brief flicker of anxiety but reminded myself of the lessons I had learned. May, I've taken steps to better myself, and I hope one day you can find peace. I regret my actions deeply. I read it slowly, absorbing the words without fear, without trembling, without the ache I had once felt. I typed a brief reply. I wish you growth and understanding. My life is moving forward. Setting the phone down, I felt a profound sense of closure. The journey that began with betrayal had reached its natural conclusion. The phone had delivered pain, yes, but it had also delivered clarity, courage, and the path to reclaiming my life. That night, I reflected on all that had happened. The phone had shown me betrayal, but it had also shown me the strength that lay dormant within me. It had forced me to confront harsh truths, make difficult decisions, and embrace independence. And in its quiet glow, I had discovered resilience, self-respect, and the capacity to love myself and others authentically. Daniel's presence in my life was a testament to the beauty of second chances, not in the sense of rekindling a past that was broken, but in the sense of allowing new possibilities to flourish. With him, I experienced laughter, trust, and gentle affection. With friends, I experienced companionship and understanding. And with myself, I experienced a profound sense of empowerment that no betrayal, no phone, and no past could ever diminish. Weeks turned into months, and I found myself embracing life with renewed energy. The phone, once a symbol of heartbreak, had become a symbol of empowerment, guiding me toward the realization that truth, however painful, is always necessary. That courage is born from facing reality, not avoiding it. And that the choices we make in the aftermath of betrayal define us far more than the betrayal itself ever could. One quiet evening, I received a message from a young woman at the community center. She had been struggling with trust after a painful relationship and reached out for guidance. I typed back, sharing my story, carefully omitting identifying details but keeping the lessons intact. I spoke of courage, resilience, and the power of facing truth, and I realized that the phone had now become a tool to help others navigate their own journeys. I thought back to that pivotal night, the night I had checked John's phone. I remembered the trembling hands, the pounding heart, the shock of betrayal, and the wave of emotions that followed. But I also remembered the clarity it brought, the courage it demanded, and the empowerment that grew from facing the truth. That night had been the catalyst, and everything since had been the journey of reclaiming myself. The moral of my story, I realized, was simple yet profound. Life will present us with moments of betrayal, pain, and unexpected revelation. We cannot always control the actions of others, nor the tools through which truth is revealed. But we can control our response. We can choose courage over fear, truth over denial, and self-respect over resentment. And in doing so, we transform our pain into strength, our heartbreak into clarity, and our experiences into wisdom that lights the path forward. That night, when I first checked John's phone, I discovered betrayal. But through it, I discovered something far greater: the strength to rise, the courage to embrace truth, and the wisdom to reclaim a life that was fully and unapologetically my own. And as I held my phone that evening, reading a simple message from Daniel inviting me for another walk in the park, I felt complete. The journey had been long, painful, and full of lessons, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever life would bring next. The phone, once a symbol of heartbreak, had become a symbol of resilience, clarity, and hope. And I knew with a certainty I had never felt before, that no betrayal, no heartbreak, and no device could ever take away the power, courage, and wisdom that lay within me. I smiled softly, set the phone down, and whispered to myself, "Thank you for showing me the truth, for showing me my strength, and for guiding me to the life I was always meant to live." And with that, I turned off the light, feeling whole, at peace, and ready to embrace every new day with courage, love, and the knowledge that the journey from heartbreak to self-discovery had made me unbreakable.